Who's next?
That's it.
Okay, Ken DeRosa, Cal Recycle.
Thank you, Senator Bell. Senator Jackson. Yes.
But I apologize. I'm wondering if the LAO, I'd just be curious if the if the LAO had a comment about the use of these funds. Is there anything from your office that you might be able to share with us on that issue?
Thank you, Senator Jackson. Thank you, Senator Jackson. Ashley Ames with the Legislative Analyst Office. We don't have any concerns with the proposal beyond our more general concerns with the package itself. With the metrics, some of the things might not have significant contributions until after 2020. And just to echo what my colleague Ms. Kirstein said earlier, since these are existing programs, trying to parse out what is new or would not occur without this additional funding versus what might have occurred anyway.
I mean, you can do that, right? You can parse it out. You can. So what the value added is?
Yes, we can work with
the... You can do a value added kind of approach. You already got some programs you're adding to those programs, and you're doing them. You're doing the projects earlier, so you can add. You can create a way of getting metrics through a value added kind of look at it.
Yeah, develop a baseline and work with the department on those estimates.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Ken DeRosa, you have the floor.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Senator. No apologies necessary, Senator Jackson. Senator Bell, Senator Jackson, nice to be here with you today. My name is Ken DeRosa. I am the Chief Deputy Director for Cal Recycle. The proposal before you is for $30 million of cap-and-trade funding. $20 million of that is intended for grants for organics infrastructure, as well as loans, $10 million of that for organics infrastructure, as well as funding for programs related to fibers, plastic and glass. The intent of the proposal is to support the expansion of existing and the establishment of new organic infrastructure and organic materials management facilities in California. This would result in reduced methane emissions from landfills and further GHG reductions in upstream resource management and manufacturing processes by using recycled materials wherever possible. The benefits of this include benefits to disadvantaged communities, and it's something that I'll discuss in a bit more detail in my remarks, by upgrading existing facilities and, where appropriate, establishing new facilities that reduce these emissions and improve air and water quality. Also, increasing recycled content, product manufacturing can also yield benefits, and we hope to increase bioenergy, biofuel production in the state. Clearly, this is outlined in the AB 32 scoping plan, but there is also a very happy nexus and relationship to the state's AB 341 goal of 75% recycled material coming out of the landfill. We know that the 75% goal, and I want to be very careful in my comments here to kind of put it in the context of 75% as well as the metrics and the goals of this specific proposal. Achieving the 75% goal could result in 20 to 30 million metric tons of GHG emission reductions in the state. We also, when one considers that 30% of waste going to the landfills is organic waste and 50% of that is food, this proposal is a critical component to that. The extent that these organic and recyclable materials can be used in California and achieving a 75% recycling rate, our economists have looked at this and realized that there's also a potential for 100,000 jobs created in the state. That's the 75% goal. I want to be very careful in my remarks here. We know
tons a year.
Correct.
Ooh.
We know that methane emissions from landfills are about 7 million metric tons per year, and food and green waste is about 4 million metric tons per year. As our BCP lays out, we would end...
Bottles.
Pardon me?
Bottles. Glass.
Well, I'm just talking in terms of organic material at that point. Forgive me, perhaps I'm misunderstanding your question.
Okay, go ahead, keep going. Sorry.
Well, we've laid out a target in our proposal of about 1 million to 2 million metric tons achieved. You know, that is speculative and really something we won't know until we begin to see what those projects are once they come forward, the grants and the loans. We have laid out a scoring criteria for our grants and our loans. We have laid out the eligibility criteria as well, and that has been handled through our public meeting process. In doing so, We know that there will be a range of projects. There will be a range of methods that we can achieve this. But because of knowing how much is going into the landfills in terms of tonnage, we can measure what is diverted away, and there is a calculus that goes on with that that will help us to understand the emission reductions associated with that. I know that there was a question relative to glass, and I do want to speak just briefly, if I could, on our fibers and plastic. We understand that there is a glass issue in the state, that recycling glass is a bit of a challenge. There is a demand for clean materials. We also know from material and information provided by the glass industry that there is a GHG benefit in using recycled glass cullet in manufacturing of new containers. Their challenges to doing that are in scoring and finding that cleaner material. That is an issue that is well beyond the scope of this particular proposal, and to sort of forecast our conversation we're going to have next week, an issue that's well beyond, somewhat beyond the scope of the beverage container recycling program. Now, the glass industries are eligible to compete for this money, but we don't know that necessarily incentivizing them towards GHG emissions is really the objective that will help them in addressing material. We know that clean material is what they need. We don't know that this necessarily works toward that, but clearly we can have conversations with you and your staff on that point. And you may hear public testimony to that issue later this afternoon. I also wanted to just speak briefly to the point about the loans. $10 million of this is intended for loans. We anticipate that if we roll out all of that loan money in the 14-15 fiscal year with principal and principal repayments as well as interest, we would probably have about $800,000 a year to refresh in the subsequent fiscal year. So we get $10 million. There will be interest earned on that. There will be some principal payments on that. So we would have $800,000 to go out new in the subsequent year. So it will take a number of years for many of these loans to fully mature and pay back before we can roll them out.
Like, how many years are the loans?
They can range from 7 to 15 years. We modeled this somewhat after our recycling market development program, and I did want to point out the agenda speaks to these loans being available within that recycling market development zone program. Just to clarify, this is actually statewide. The RMDZ program is towards specified zones, but our cap and trade loan program would go statewide.
All right. Okay, Senator Jackson, you had some questions.
I'm wondering if you're targeting any geographical area for most of this funding. You talk about recycling market development zones. Could you explain what those are? And then if you are targeting particular parts of the state?
Yeah, just to clarify, the zones, I think there are about 30 of them within the state. They are geographic in nature, but this proposal is not limited to those recycling market development zones. They're available statewide. It's really a matter of where those grant applications come from, and there is nothing necessarily targeting regions. It's really more what comes to us in terms of applications. So we know that some of the urban areas may be better situated to establish organics and food waste collection programs, for example, just because of the sheer volume. For example, the city of Sacramento has recently started a pilot project where food waste is being collected and it's being gathered and sent to the Clean World facility out in the eastern part of the county. So there are those kinds of projects that could happen.
I would think the Central Valley or other agricultural producing areas would be interested in this, and particularly in the Central Valley where they have such problems with air quality and the production of methane and other greenhouse gases seems to be somewhat concentrated.
That's correct. And to that point as well, the agricultural community can benefit greatly from the increased use of compost. We've read that compost can, 3 inches of compost can save up to 30% of water usage. And in a drought, that's really a key strategy. And so there could be projects along those lines as well. It's not entirely just food waste and food to energy, but it's also compost.
And are you doing anything to encourage composting, or is that part of the? I mean, there's an answer right there. Is anything being done proactively?
We're working with some composting professionals. We're trying to understand the full market need that's out there. There is a good deal of composting that's going on, but it's somewhat plateaued over the last 5 to 10 years, and so this is an opportunity for some of that to expand.
And it's an opportunity. What is your agency doing to assure that opportunity is pursued?
Yeah, well, this is clearly one of those elements. We also are we're promulgating some regulations in the very near future regarding compost, and we would anticipate that will probably become part of the public process within the next several months.
And I'd like to encourage, here you have answers, you've got things that work. I would really encourage that all these departments do everything they can to advance them, even if they aren't necessarily, out there in the front end. But composting, I don't want to get into the whole process, but, it makes sense, and there are places where it could be extraordinarily helpful, and it's just my hope that we respond intelligently by promoting these things, and if you have to do outreach, using some of the funds for that, because the return seems to be a great return on a very small investment. So I hope that, it sounds like a no-brainer almost, but I hope that you'll pursue that as you go forward.
Thank you. So in other words, we're going to get some of the metrics so we can kind of compile it with the other information that we're trying to pull together, and you're going to help us do that with
Yes,
our
of course.
staff.
Yeah, we're happy to provide whatever data is necessary. Much of the data that I've referenced this afternoon is published. It's something that we've articulated in our scoring criteria and our guidelines for the grants and loans. Grants are something that CalRecycle does very well. The men and women of that department that I have the privilege of working with are very good at grants and loans, and so we can be very quick to roll out with our funding.
Okay, and do you have any comments on CalRecycle, LAO? None? Okay, thank you. Next we'll go to Department of Food and Agriculture, Jim Houston. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
And we have an interesting proposal here for your department, so I'll give the floor to you.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Jim Houston with California Department of Food and Agriculture. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Legislation. If someone would indulge me on the panel, I'd like to make room for Kristen Macy, who's our Director of Measurement Standards and a woman. So we'll populate.
Anyone else want to bring up?
And she can speak to the hydrogen program, which we'll get to eventually.
I'll give up my seat.
Oh, thank you. So I'll begin. So our proposal is for $20 million in cap-and-trade funds to be spread into 3 different programs. Wait till you hear her testify. Into 3 different programs, the bulk of which would be $12 million to go into grants to develop dairy digesters in the state. We anticipate reductions of between 15,000 and 21,000 metric tons, assuming 6 projects within there, and a small portion of that, 500,000 or so, we expect to go to research to help with figuring out some of the sort of co-benefits that one can derive from digester technology. Measuring the greenhouse reductions in digesters is a relatively simple thing to do because you're capturing the methane, and we have a baseline for an uncovered lagoon. Once you cover it and you capture that, you can measure the reduction in methane going out to the atmosphere. Also, there are different things that you can do with the product of the digester. So if you're creating electricity or you're creating a fuel, you're displacing something. So we can measure that displacement, and we anticipate, once those projects get off the ground, in the next, 2 years at least, we'd be seeing some sort of reductions. Once there's many that are in the pipeline already, we get those out, the grants out, those get built. soon after that, they're going to start reaping benefits. So, depending on what happens at, the PUC with their remat that they're going through right now and the proposals that we get, but certainly in the next 2 to 3 years, you'll be seeing real measurable results. The second...
This is not something that will get results next year or the year after. It's in the third year. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think you might be able to see something in the second year. I mean, just in terms of construction and the logistics. So to see it in 1 year might be difficult.
I need you to give us some more information about that.
Oh, yeah. So the plan is...
We're looking at getting some real numbers we can get.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the 2020 and then maybe the decade beyond 2020.
Yeah.
Like what would happen. That's kind of what we're looking at.
So the real fortunate thing about this program is we've been extensively involved for the past 2 to 3 years with what's called a Fed State Digester Working Group. So we've been working with the federal government, with local agencies, with industry, and with regional bodies to better understand the impediments to getting digesters. An outgrowth of this was that everyone agreed to a consolidated RFP in terms of the things that the different agencies would like to see in digester proposals. So that process is already gone. So once we're able to get the authority, we want to utilize that working group to evaluate the grants. We do have a sense of what's out there and kind of what's in the pipeline, but we don't want to sort of prejudice what we're going to receive. So we have a sense, but we can't say for certain, what we're going to receive once the programs begin. We don't imagine it's going to take too long to get the grant program up and running. We should be definitely getting grants out next year. How much time it takes to construct depends on the different proposals, the complexity, and how sort of ready to go. We're certainly a mind towards shovel-ready projects, but even shovel-ready might take into the next fiscal year. Once those are going, I mean, the minute you flip that switch, you're going to see greenhouse gas reductions. So you conceivably could theoretically see it next year. I just think that's really hopeful, but much more likely in the second and third year we're going to have those results coming in, and certainly by 2020 we'll have a substantial amount. The second proposal is on the fertilizer research education proposal, so that's $5 million for research and a better understanding sort of the nitrogen cycle. One of the nice things, and I should have mentioned on the digester, methane is 21 times more potent than carbon dioxide, so we're really capturing a more potent gas. And nitrous oxide is 310 times more potent than carbon dioxide, so getting at understanding the nitrogen cycle and what causes, so nitrogen goes into the soil, it interacts, it goes through a microbial cycle, and then portions of it are emitted and create nitrous oxide. So we have a sense, you have to evaluate it on a crop-by-crop basis, so each crop sort of interacts differently. So we have a sense with the first 10, sort of top 10 commodities.
I read your report.
Okay.
I know about it.
Okay, so what...
I read the thing about which crops.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'll spare you that. So that's what we're going to look at, is we're going to look at the next 10, we're going to try and understand how nitrogen moves through, and we'll be able to measure reductions once those practices and once that research gets applied.
So you're going to be able to tell the crops to lower the amount of nitrogen they can use, or figure out how to cut.
We will be able to utilize tools so that growers of those crops can use fertilizers more efficient, so that there's less nitrogen leaking. What's that?
Lower the amount of nitrogen.
Yeah, well, I mean, using more efficiently, I think because you could use the same amount of nitrogen, get more crops and have less going out into the atmosphere, less going down into the ground, but you're still using the same amount of nitrogen. It's just being used more efficiently to where it's intended, which is inside the crop itself. So the measurements for that will be a little bit more attenuated because we have to conduct the research.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yes.
Are the crops that have grown in acreage in California, are they the ones that use the most nitrogen?
That's a good question that I cannot answer, but I will get you that answer.
No, there's certain crops that have added acreage or expanded in California over the last couple decades, and then the part of it is the use of nitrogen that allows them to be productive, correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think what you're saying is we want to look at the crops that have accelerated. I mean, obviously, a lot of trees are coming into the state.
And they use a lot of water also, so that kind of is another issue.
Yeah, so what we're going to be able to do is we'll cross-reference basically the information that we have, look at those crops, and be able to tell you how that fits
Which
in.
crops use the most nitrogen
Yeah.
per acre?
Well, are you interested in the actual consumption of the nitrogen itself, or off, the sort of leakage of the nitrogen?
Leakage of the nitrogen is what I'm interested in.
Okay, we'll get you that information. And then the third proposal is what Ms. Macy can speak to, and that is the hydrogen fuel, or the alternative fuels program. So I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senators. Everybody knows that the Air Resources Board is involved with fuels, and it may come as a surprise for people to know that the Department of Food and Agriculture is also involved with fuels. The ARB's focus is on vehicle emissions and air quality, of course, but our focus is on fuel quality, which ties to vehicle performance. And then we're also known for weights and measures. Weights and measures is interested in accuracy in transactions, and so at a fueling station, that would mean the accuracy of the dispenser. So every time you fuel up, you see that little round sticker that says it's been tested by a weights and measures official. This particular program would allow us to establish fuel quality and quantity standards for fuels and dispensers that are going to be dispensing fuels coming from ag waste. So we're going to tie nicely into the dairy digester project, and the methane that's produced from there, we're going to spin that off into a transportation fuel. What that does is it helps commercialize an additional fuel, most notably natural gas. Both CNG is a liquefied natural gas, also LNG. And to the greenhouse gas reductions, Jim was talking about nitrous oxides, but the study that was done by USDOE and NREL that compares diesel trucks with those that were powered by CNG, you've got a 75% lowering of carbon monoxide, 50% of NOx, 95% of particulate matter. That's serious reduction. And of course, let's not forget the fact that a lot of those trucks are operating in the Central and San Joaquin Valleys. So we've got a huge benefit to the public health benefit in the disadvantaged communities. We also have an economic benefit because the dairies can benefit from a transportation fuel that they can use locally to transport the commodities to the processing facilities. There's potential job creation, obviously, not only with the digesters, but with the associated equipment to dispense the fuel. So as far as actually calculating and the quantity of greenhouse gases, we're going to report it in CO2 equivalent reductions. And again, just to focus on some research that was presented to ARB in the AB 32 workshops, talked about the amount of gasoline that could be displaced by using digesters. I think that's well known. Jim mentioned that. But then another USDA DOE study showed that transforming that methane into a renewable energy source can eliminate up to 6 million metric tons of CO2 per year in California. So that's optimal. So please don't quote me on that number, because there are a lot of factors that are going to affect what we can actually realize.
That's a year, right?
Yes, sir, per year. So our metric is going to be one that's well established and well known. The Air Resources Board has a carbon intensity matrix. It's a table that takes the carbon intensity value of various pathways of fuels and compares those. So the worst polluters, of course, unleaded gas is going to have a carbon intensity value of 99, diesel 98. The pipeline natural gas that comes out is at 68. And guess what? The ag-produced biogas is at 13.5%. So those numbers are they're tremendous. So, and of course, that's ag waste. The lessons that we learn from this research project can be translated into waste that would come from landfills and other types of sources. So we think that it's a win-win. Not only are we attacking the transportation sector, which is 40% of the pollutants, we're also working on the ag sector, which is 6% of the pollutants. We're expanding the portfolio of alternative fuels here in California. We're working, this project has potential to work hand in hand with some of the things that other state agencies are doing. The CEC has sunk AB 118 funds into research on natural gas engines that can go into the heavy trucks, the Peterbilts and so on. And ARB has certified a number of aftermarket conversion kits kits to natural gas, the payback periods for those can be less than 2 years, depending on the miles traveled. So, and a lot of those are actually bifueling or trifueling. So that would be CNG or, gasoline or diesel. For only $3 million, I can't see that this is a bad deal for the state of California.
All right, you got the message. So you're going to be able to get us some metrics on the 3 categories and show us the 2020 numbers and then beyond that next.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I would appreciate that. And then nitrogen information that I asked for, the crops and so forth. Okay, thank you all the staff for presenting the wonderful reports on all the different categories. And now we'll go to public testimony on Part A. And we have 3 requirements I want to mention for people. And I want everybody to follow these, so listen closely now. Be brief. Try to keep it to 2 minutes apiece. Or how many people want to speak? Okay, and I'm going to put you down at 1 minute. Okay, we got too many people to speak, so do it 1 minute. Send us letters, and please don't repeat each other's if you can kind of help us get through this hearing. Senator Jackson's got grandma, like she's in town, right?
No, I got to go to Grandma.
Grandma's in town, right?
Celebrating her 100th birthday.
Yeah, so give Grandma a break here, okay? She's going to celebrate the 100th birthday.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, and without any ado, please be brief. Submit letters. Address our 3 questions if you can. We know how wonderful all the projects are, so let's focus on what we're doing here today.
Mr. Chairman, Josh Pane on behalf of the California Refuse Recycling Council on the Recycle budget. We just want to give our voice of support for that $30 million. We've worked closely. We have about 100 companies throughout the state, and we think it'll do a tremendous good in compost and anaerobic digestion. My second representation is for the California Bus Association. We are basically the transportation engine for California tourism, from ports, from airports, and throughout the state. So we'd like to give the committee a pitch and we ask the executive officer of the Air Board if that $200 million applied to private bus fleets as well. He wasn't quite sure. He thought it did, but we'd like to make a request to the committee that it does include private bus fleets. They are including private truck fleets, but the engine for California tourism, a multi-billion-dollar industry in California, we are that engine, and we transport folks from airports, from ports, in and out of the state.
How many buses and how much?
Oh, there are thousands.
That's what we want.
There are over, I think, 2,000 buses within the state.
Okay, you get what we need.
Okay.
How many buses and how much reduction in air quality?
And so we believe, as we've worked with CARB, we believe what they've told us, and we've worked on the rule with them, and in fact changing the rule's name from the truck rule to the truck and bus rule. Okay. So we are totally in support of the CARB pilot program and the $200 million because we think it'll reduce it a significant amount. We don't have the number of the significance, but they right now don't specify private buses, and we'd like to do that. Yeah. Our last piece is in those areas that you're looking for, in those disadvantaged communities, the terminals exist right now, the private bus terminals as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So, thank you.
Joshua Shaw with the California Transit Association, representing all of your local public transit systems. I'll speak to the sustainable communities and the rail mod piece that you spent a lot of time on, Mr. Chair. We're in a coalition with the transportation, it's the Transportation Coalition for Livable Communities, cities, counties, regional agencies, NRDC, EDF, private sector contractors, and unions that work on infrastructure projects. Our basic concept was to call for a sustainable communities program that's very robust, acknowledges the regional role that you're so familiar with, having come from MTC, and funds integrated transportation projects. want to thank the governor for putting a sustainable communities piece into his program. Would urge that we want to work with you to make it even better. To answer your 3 questions under sustainable communities, what are the GHG reductions? When you do combinations of transportation and land use strategies mixed together, neighborhood design changes that create compact land uses, complete streets and road maintenance projects with more intensive transit service through those corridors, you get between 30% and, as Mr. McCoy said from SGC, 40% GHG reductions. If you do the math on the total basket of GHGs, transportation shares 38%, 30 to 40% of that is about 53 million metric tons of emissions, possibly from sustainable communities. How do you measure those? The sustainable community strategies that the metropolitan planning organizations have already put in place have begun to be certified as meeting their GHG reduction goals by the ARB. So we have those plans in place. The projects ought to be selected by those regions based on those plans. We need clear rules from SGC, the Air Resources Board, and the CTC on how to do the selection, but the regional agencies know those projects very well. And then finally, if you put money into transit service, for instance, we could increase service tomorrow. The mid to long-term reductions on GHGs will take place when we get those truly transformative infrastructure investments. On rail mod, thank you both, Senators Jackson and Bell, for focusing with the administration on the need to grow that rail mod program. All 13 of our rail transit agencies agree with you. There's got to be more investments. We don't necessarily think it's either or. Either. Our association specifically supports the high-speed rail project done right, so we take no qualms with the cap-and-trade proposal there. Do want to work with you on figuring out how to make the rail mod program work for all of our rail transit agencies. Thanks for your interest in that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Michael Quigley, the California Alliance for Jobs.
Back as fast as that last guy. You can get the message across.
I am here also representing the Transportation Coalition for Livable Communities in support of Mr. Shaw's comments. And I would also urge the committee and the legislature as a whole to support broad eligible uses for greenhouse gas monies when it comes to infrastructure funding. Not only is there a lot of need in implementing SB 375 and creating the infill supporting density that the greenhouse gas reductions are requiring. If there is more opportunity for the, well, I'll call it at that. Thank you.
Bill Higgins with the California Association of Councils of Governments, which includes all 18 metropolitan planning organizations that are responsible for SB 375. I recharacterized your 3 questions as how much, how soon, and how do you know? And on the how do you know question, we agree with the Strategic Growth Council that how Mr. Shaw characterized that the relationship to land use and transportation can reduce the GHGs. The issue there is that it's our organization's models that are the ones that are actually measuring. We're the ones that are actually running those changes through our sketch models and are better, and we would say are better prepared to make those last stick decisions in terms of which projects would be selected in order to get you to a higher how much number. We think that there's a strong role for the Strategic Growth Council. They have to set guidelines. There's definitely a strong role for state involvement here. But give us the guidelines so that the resources match the mandate that you created under SB 375, where you told the regions to go out and get the project. This model has the mandate at the regions, and the resources still being spent at the state. We think that needs a tweak.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Senator Bill Jamie Levin with the Center for Transportation and the Environment. We're a nonprofit. Our members are actively engaged in zero-emission bus programs in Southern and Northern California. Those are very successful projects. We've sent a letter regarding the success of those projects and advocating your endorsement for a $35 million allocation out of the $200 million set aside for transportation to take advantage and leverage the success of those zero-emission projects, which are benefiting largely economically disadvantaged communities. In answer to your 3 questions, first question is that we're estimating upwards of, with $35 million investment for this program out of cap and trade, approximately 1,100 tons, up to 1,100 tons of greenhouse gas reductions over the 12-year life of each vehicle. And that translates to, for this project, and for the centers of excellence, upwards of 94,000 tons of reduction, and the cost of that would be roughly $4.50 per ton per bus, or $370 per ton per project. The metrics are pretty straightforward in terms of calculating and assessing what the advantage of this program would be, and in terms of when it could be implemented over the next couple of years. But I'd like to point out that we have over 15,000 transit buses in the state of California, so the benefits over a period of 15 to 20 years are significant into the many millions of tons. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Justin Fansel on behalf of the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. Wanted to start by quickly noting your comments earlier today about needing to look further down the road than each year annually finding money for projects. Obviously, you well know our plan for MTC, Plan Bay Area, is a 28-year plan, nearly $300 billion. That we need opportunities to bring that money in on a regular basis looking forward. So we hope. Mr. Shaw mentioned earlier we want to work to make this better. That's one of the things we want to talk about. The answer to your questions, our plan is 18% per capita GHG reduction. We're ready to start building right now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Kiana Bess on behalf of the California State Association of Counties. Align my comments with Mr. Shaw and others from the Transportation Coalition for Livable Communities. I did want to touch on one specific issue, and that's road maintenance, which is not clearly included as an eligible use under the governor's proposal, yet it can yield up to a 10% decrease in GHG emissions. As maintaining smoother roads allows for better traffic flows, healthy bridges don't require detours, which keep those associated GHG emissions at a lower level. In order to achieve the 30 to 40% overall GHG reductions from the transportation sector, as Mr. Shaw mentioned, road maintenance is an important element of that. So we believe that investment in sustainable communities, transportation infrastructure, and land use linkages will provide you immediate, short-term, quantifiable reductions, and also leverage the longer-term investments as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, go ahead. You've been standing.
Steve Wallach on behalf of the Alameda County Transportation Commission. We're a part of the Transportation Coalition for Livable Communities and support their comments. And particularly, we'd like to enhance the role of the local regional level in the project selection process for this sustainable community strategies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt Robinson with Shogun Antwi here today on behalf of the Solano Transportation Authority, the San Francisco Municipal Transit Agency, the San Mateo County Transit District, and Caltrain. And I will just go ahead for brevity's sake and associate my comments with those of Mr. Shaw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm Jeannie Merrill with the California Climate and Agriculture Network. We're also part of the Natural Working Lands Coalition. We wanted to support SGC's proposal and think the inclusion of farmland and open space protection is central to meeting many of the goals for infill development. Research done by UC Davis, funded by Peer, finds that an acre of urban land emits 70 times more greenhouse gas emissions compared to an acre of farmland. And business as usual scenarios compared to a robust infill development scenario for the state suggests that we can, with an infill development scenario with strong working in natural lands component, reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 22% compared to that business as usual scenario. And in addition, we're supportive of the governor's proposal, including agricultural management strategies as part of the climate change solution. We encourage CDFA to have their nitrogen management and water management expenditures go towards demonstration projects that bring on-farm projects that demonstrate methane and nitrous oxide emissions, as well as CO2 sequestration in soils and woody biomass. We're also in support of a diversity of bioenergy projects to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And while the drought relief package included $10 million for ag water use efficiency, we think more can be done there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Brendan Tuig on behalf of the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association. CAPCO believes that GHG reduction projects that also secure co-benefits in reducing air pollution and decreasing exposure to harmful air contaminants should be the highest priority when you look at this. We urge that you consider this as an overarching element in how you approach it. We also urge you to ensure investments that maximize the use of existing programs, structures and processes when the money goes out, because air districts and other local programs already have procedures in place with experienced staff to evaluate project proposals, also administer and enforce contract performance, and track funding streams and emission reductions. Also, we encourage you to allocate additional funding toward on-road diesel truck fleet turnover and zero and near zero emission transportation and infrastructure. And we support investments in energy efficiency and clean energy, and also recommend that you include investments in incentives for wood stove and fireplace change-outs, you get black carbon reductions there, and financing for renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. Also increasing incentives for electrifying ag pumps. And then we submitted a detailed letter to the committee and be happy to engage you further. And if I also might add, on behalf of Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District, who's a member of the Transportation Coalition for Livable Communities, I'd like to align my comments with them. So thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you.